You're listening to Were You Still Talking? Hey, welcome back. You are listening to Were You Still Talking? This is Joel Albrecht, and in the studio today I have Dr. Albert Bramante, a seasoned talent agent with more than 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry. He holds a Ph.D. in psychology from Walden University. Additionally, he is a certified hypnotist and NLP practitioner, bringing a unique brand of psychological insight and practical expertise to his work, driven by a passion for both the performing arts and the human psyche. He embarked on a mission to empower actors to overcome self-sabotage and unlock their full potential. Throughout his impressive career, Dr. Bramante has achieved remarkable success as a talent agent, securing roles for actors in a wide array of productions, including TV shows, films, commercials, Broadway and off-Broadway performances. Hey, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Joel, for having me. I'm really happy to be here and happy to have a chat with you.
So my first silly question is, can you hypnotize people that don't want to be hypnotized?
If they don't know it, I think they're like
Yeah.
cannot, but there is such thing as wake hypnosis that and it's not that you don't want to be hypnotized. A lot of times it's outside of your awareness. So, case in point, and we sometimes even do this to each other without even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
So you come home, your partner comes home, or you come home and your partner says to you, gee, you look really tired. You got bags under your eyes. Now all of a sudden you start to feel a little tired. Or
right.
You don't look so, you go home or visit your parents, gee, son, you don't look too good. And all of a sudden you start to feel a bit, maybe I haven't been feeling well. But you weren't thinking that 30 seconds ago until that suggestion came in.
And thankfully, parents would never do that.
Oh, never. No. Except mine. But anyway, but the truth of the matter is that all hypnosis is suggestions. And everybody's suggestible, because if we weren't suggestible, we wouldn't be able to learn it. So it's all comes down to is, are you open to, at that moment, open to suggestions? Everybody is suggestible, which means hence everybody can be hypnotized. The idea here is that there has to be consent.
Right.
And now if you're actively resisting it, there's nothing. I wouldn't even want to work with somebody like that, because the thing about the human mind is we cannot change free will. So I'm not, like I said, now if you're skeptical, that's a different story.
Oh, I see. Uh-huh.
There's a difference between skepticism and not willing to be, not like totally resistance or just skeptical. Maybe due to fear or just the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people fear hypnosis because of what they see in the movies or on TV shows, where it's sensationalized, the stage shows, where it's, you have the hypnotist waving the pocket watch and people cooking like a chicken. And that's the one thing people are going to say, I don't want to cook like a chicken. I'm like, well, then don't.
So that is always the thing that's been around for a long time.
I mean, it's so cliche, but it's like,
right.
And sometimes when I see stage hypnotists do this, I'm like, we need to think of a better act. Like, do something different, because that's so cliche.
And that was my question. When stage hypnotists do that, are they hypnotizing people, or is that an act? Because there's Penn and Teller are very adamant about the difference between like magic and actual
I would say it's a little bit of both, because it's almost like the adult version of the game Simon Says. If you take a look, remember when you were a child, Simon says, jump up and down. You did it without question. Simon says, go run over here. You did it without question. It was like, Simon, what are you talking about? No. The kid just went and did it. So it's almost like the same thing here. Also, with these stage shows, number one, people are already volunteering to go up there. So you can almost make the argument that the hypnotizing has already been done by the time they sit their butt in that seat, and everything else is just kind of like a ritual. Just like, to kind of like get someone just in a mindset. But they've already volunteered. So they already know that they're about to do this. They're about to, possible. Now, usually what you don't see in a lot of stage shows, unless you see it live, is they'll bring up like maybe 25, 30 people. And then maybe narrow it down to like 8 or 9 or 10 by the end, by the time the show really starts taking off. Because some people are going to be resistant, afraid, skeptical. And therefore, the hypnotist would usually say, would send them back down to the audience because they're not going to be fully active or fully engaged during the performance. Because stage hypnotism is all about having the show. Now,
right.
Of course,
sure.
Sure. In a real session, which is why I think stage. There's some similarities, but there's a big difference. In a session, I'm not going to throw someone out just because they're reluctant or uncomfortable at first about going into trance or going into the state of suggestibility. It may take a session or two just to get someone into that flow state. So the one thing I don't like, and again, what works for me, I don't use like the word say, I'm going to put you under hypnosis. Because that almost sounds like, like going under anesthesia.
Right, it does very much so. Yeah.
So if I say we're going under, it's like, I don't want to go under anything.
Right. Who wants to do that?
Go under anything.
Yeah, of course.
So it's like we'll go into this, or just would you like to be hypnotized, or would you like to try? Not go under because again, it sounds like I have control over you, right? And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to be controlled by another person. At least most people wouldn't. So the whole point is that it's a voluntary, 100% consensual process, and it's all about just really being open to suggestion. And this is done weekly. I mean, look at propaganda. That's mass hypnosis right there.
Well, that's something I was going to kind of touch on because you were saying no one can actually be hypnotized if they don't want to be, but aren't we every day with what, with the media we consume and et cetera,
yes.
et cetera.
However, if you already have your mind made up on a certain position, topic, no matter, you're going to tune the other media out. But if you're open-minded or you're kind of in that impressional stage, you're learning about something new, that's when those messages can seek in.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is a very powerful, process for hypnosis. I mean, that's why, especially what we saw during a lot of people's anxiety was through the roof during 2020 because of a virus and a potentially fatal airborne virus. And if you already had a lot of anxiety beforehand, now that just went through the roof.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the thought of it made you cough.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why I got this stuff.
Yes,
anyway,
it's a powerful stuff.
Just like if you start seeing like on TV or around people, there's insects around. You'll notice you may start feeling itchy.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. It's the same thing. Or what late at night if you're watching a horror movie, all of a sudden you start maybe hearing sounds and seeing flashes that you may not have seen before. That's the same process. So
I understand. Right.
A lot of times, what it's all about is like hallucination, like what we call positive hallucination. Not positive meaning good, but positive is seeing or hearing things or feeling things that aren't present. Now, there's also a such thing as negative hallucinations. How many times have especially with people with cell phones? How many times have you thought you lost your phone? not to realize it's either in your pocket or you're holding it. You see people rant, where's my phone? You're holding it. Or like for people who wear glasses like myself, sometimes it's like, where's my glass? Oh, it's on my head. Or oh, I'm wearing them. So again, for a temporary lapse of mind, it created a illusion of something not being there. Now, we can take this a step further. So what if you had an anxiety or some type of phobia? And what if we were get you to forget that ever happened?
Well, I love the way you talk about applying this to your agency and to entertainment, and because all of us in the entertainment field, I would assume, well, maybe not all of us. Maybe, I mean, there's a couple that don't, but most of us have the imposter syndrome, fear of rejection. I mean, I think I could have done better at certain times in my life if I didn't have, I have an extreme fear of rejection and don't like it. And I have thin skin, they would say in the industry. That's why the podcast works, because no one can tell me I can't do it. But so to apply that, what you're talking about, to those things, I think is it's really powerful. And
yeah, no, absolutely, and it's sort of like even with entertainers or actors or creatives, it's about you know helping you become more confident on stage and reframing the idea of anxiety to excitement. So, for example, like if you look at the signs of anxiety or nervousness, they're the same exact signal as excitement.
oh, that's very interesting. Right.
So
Right.
if we were to reframe that, said no, because a lot of times what happens, you start to feel butterflies in your stomach, maybe elevated heart rate and body temperature, and all of a sudden your brain will start to interpret it almost kind of like a knee-jerk reaction of, uh-oh, I'm now anxious or I'm nervous. But if we turn around and say, instead of no, you're excited now about doing it. You're excited about performing. And that's real. I mean, actors really are. That's why you became an actor.
That's so interesting, because I was just listening to a podcast with a very well-known character actor, comedian, etc. And the host asked him if did he ever get nervous, because he's doing some parts that are really difficult. And he said, do you ever get nervous? And he says, no, I get excited.
Yeah.
So that's,
and
yeah.
it's the same thing, because the one thing about the brain is there's no way you're going to turn those feelings off. Our brain is always protecting us from danger.
Right.
Perceived danger, real danger, whatever that is. That's the purpose of the brain. So anytime we step on the stage or step in the spotlight, it's sending signal like potential danger. And it's kind of like where we need a little bit of discipline and focus and saying, okay, I'm not in danger here. I'm excited.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I get nervous when I'm sitting in my house, staring at a computer screen and talking to people. And a lot of times when I do this, I'm streaming to an audience, but there's no one else. Like, there's no one else but me. I'm just sitting here talking to myself in a way.
Yeah, or just having a conversation with somebody else.
Just having a conversation with chat or whatever. And it can make me very nervous. However, when I get in front of a camera or on stage, I'm nervous up until that point. So I'm nervous up until I'm performing, because then when I'm performing, I'm that, whatever that is, I'm doing that.
Yeah, and a lot of times, even a lot of well-known actors are, which may be surprising for a lot of people, but, and I've heard the same thing about musicians, is that some of the most larger-than-life characters, and they can be loud, they can be brash, or like obnoxious characters or personas, but the moment that the performance is over, they can be very shy, meek, and timid.
I think,
Even.
yeah, I think Eddie Murphy is a really good example of that. If you ever see him interviewed, he's very like quiet and,
Yeah.
not subdued, but he's just very serious and quiet
Yeah.
and nothing like his characters. And it's like, well, duh, he's a performer. He's good at it.
And that's the whole thing too. It's like when you understand it from this angle, well, yeah, that would make perfect sense. They're performing. They're not. It's not them. But I think sometimes the public gets confused and thinks, they're that character. Like Eddie Murphy is going to be Eddie Murphy everywhere else. But no, Eddie Murphy's playing a character in a specific role at the moment. And
Right.
even when he's eating, he still may be referred to as himself, but it's a persona now he's putting on. And you'd be surprised a lot. Like a lot of times, even comedians get heckled, like when they're in public, especially if they're a little bit on the controversial or edgy side. How dare you think that way? And a lot of them will say, no, I don't. These are not my beliefs. I'm doing my persona's belief, or my persona's viewpoint. They're not mine. And some of them can be very, intellectual. Like Jim Carrey is very, a lot different than his character. He plays a lot of, does a lot of physical comedy, and sometimes he'll play like fools, larger than life characters, and really foolish characters. That's his brand. That's his brand. But off camera, he's very compassionate, intelligent, articulate, and those are just again a character he's playing.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, he's now actually kind of dropped out of performing.
Yeah,
to pursue his passion, passion for spirituality and.
Yeah, I mean, his life, he made, made his mark, he made his money, and that's fine, and that's good. I mean, if you're doing what you love, then because a lot of people get confused. I mean, I remember even listening to an interview that Anthony Hopkins gave, a couple, decades ago, after he, wrapped the Hannibal movie. Now he was brilliant. That's a brilliant example of method acting right there. The way that he portrayed the Hannibal Lecter character. But people were coming up to him asking him, like, what do you normally eat on a daily basis? People were coming up, like, quoting Hannibal when he was out in public.
Yeah.
And at first he thought it was a little cute, but after a while he, like, would sometimes ask people to stop and leave him alone. Because, and I'm thinking, I thought the whole thing about asking what he eats would be really ridiculous. Because, like, guys, I'm just an actor reading a script that somebody else wrote.
And people don't get that. I mean,
right.
You're an agent, so you understand, and you're a performer, so you get this. But I think a lot of people in the general public, they don't differentiate between the person on screen and the fact that that's an actor portraying that.
Yeah.
And especially when they do such a good job. I mean that's what's crazy. The better you are at performing, the harder it is for people to figure out that no, that's not really you. The people on the pit aren't doctors. They're not going to probably be able to help you if you get hurt. It's like yeah. It's interesting.
It's just they're hired to do a role, and that's all it is. It's just a character. But because and sometimes it could be a good testament that they did a good job. If people cannot distinguish if that's like that's a good acting job, then that's what I would say. That's and that's why they win all the awards because of how good they can take something that they didn't even write, that wasn't there. The lines and words that aren't there, but they're able to do that. And I also, what I find interesting, especially with actors and with Joy and all that, is how much they get trashed, and by other people, like, oh, the actors are flaky, they're not needed. But yet, what did everybody turn to during COVID? Netflix.
Right.
Well, how do you think those movies and TV shows that you were able to watch and catch up with and keep you occupied during, the COVID, during the shutdown when we were, locked in our homes. What do you think? Who do you think, enabled you, gave you that experience? And so that's sort of like, because even in my industry a couple of years ago, even post COVID, we had a couple setbacks. We had the actors strike and the writers strike in 2023, which really slowed things down for us.
And it's still slow, isn't it? I mean,
Very much slow.
Yeah.
It's starting to, it comes like we get the promise like, oh, it's going to get higher.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the problems that we were running into in our industry was a lot of production. We're now starting not just, and I'm in New York, so we were at one point, I'd say prior to COVID, really strong, and we were starting to build back the momentum before the strikes happened. Because in late 2020 things started filming again, and then 2022 we really started to see things take off. And so we were back to, I wouldn't say complete numbers or normal prior to COVID. We were getting there. And then all of a sudden we had the writer's strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike at the same time, which is kind of unprecedented since like 1980.
Right.
It was the last time that happened. So everything went on standstill. Now, in November, kind of like both strikes, by the time November 2023, both strikes were over. Like the Writers Guild had settled about maybe 6 weeks to 8 weeks before Screen Actors Guild did. And so what everyone thought was like, okay, now things are going to open back up again, and we're just going to be, flooded with work. And that didn't happen.
It didn't happen. It seems like it was almost promised that it would happen. I get a lot of information from this Facebook group called Crew Stories. So it's the crew who've been making their living at this for 40 years. And they're like, no, there's no work. It's not happening.
And even so now, because it's like almost 2 years past, we're almost coming up to 2 years now.
Right.
That the parties have settled. And we're still, there are things happening, to give that perspective, but not nearly as much as it should be and as much as it, would have been. So it is kind of interesting, to see and to be in this time, and especially being an actor, that of this time, or, even those that are coming up, into acting training. I'm like, this is an interesting time becoming, that you're deciding to graduate from conservatory. Now, will things pick up? I know in New Jersey, where I'm based, and even in New York, a couple new studios were built. So hopefully that'll be utilized so that we have more work here. Because also, as I was saying before, a lot of productions were beginning to move out of the country.
Right. Well, yeah.
It was cheaper, and the cost, the tax incentives were, the production costs were a lot cheaper. So, on one hand, you can't really blame the it's a business,
right.
Bottom line. But, you could just imagine the crew and the actors out of work, because even every film or every TV show that you watch, what you're not seeing is that there's probably 2 or 3 times as many people behind the scenes than there are in front of the camera. So a movie, especially that you see in the movie theater, can have almost up to 1,000 or more people behind the scenes.
Oh yeah,
from every different department. And the same thing with the TV show that you watch. If you watch like Law and Order, NCIS, or Criminal Minds, that there's hundreds of people behind the scenes of every episode, from all different departments: lighting, script, post-production, makeup, wardrobe, craft services, wrangling extras, location, all of these things, business services. So this is why it was like the strike was so catastrophic.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just actors or writers, everybody that worked behind it.
Even podcasts, when people see these podcasts that make headlines, okay, there's the starting to happen where a podcast host or a podcast will get this huge deal for millions of dollars. Those podcasts have anywhere from 20 to 100 people behind them. I mean, they're working like a newsroom, and
Yeah, no,
yeah,
they've
pretty
got
nuts.
that's why they're making that like one of the ones that I watch a lot, but is Diary of a CEO
Hmm.
and Stephen Marley. Great podcast, but they've got $1 million team, millions of dollars they put in every season and every year because they like I heard he's like it's 8 or 9 different studios that he films in across the world because he travels for his guests.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was already real wealthy to begin with. Same thing with Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, of course, being the grand, the father of modern podcast. Um, coincidentally, and I hope, I do apologize, but I don't really watch the show, but I'm still amazed by the success he had.
I can't watch the show anymore because of who he decides to have as guests, and so I used to. His Joe Rogan doing a podcast with Kevin Smith is what convinced me I could do a podcast because Kevin Smith said, "You're just getting paid for sitting on your butt and talking. Anyone could do this." And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's
that's
like,
all it
well,
really
yeah,
is like sitting and talking. I
yeah,
mean, the thing is with him, his podcast can be up to 3 or 4 hours long.
right,
And
right.
but he also had a large following before he even got into podcast.
Well, he was already a wrestling commentator, and before that, he was a very successful stand-up comedian
And host. I remember he
and
hosted that Fear Factor.
oh yeah, Fear
Yeah,
Factor, and then he was in was it talk radio? He was in a really good sitcom, which I guess he didn't like doing.
yeah.
He could have kept doing that, but right. I forget that he hosted Fear Factor. So yeah, he
That's where I
already
first heard
yeah.
about him. Because I used to watch that, and but that that's an anomaly.
Yes.
But what's
Extreme.
interesting is a lot of actors are now podcasting themselves.
It's true, and it kind of annoys me because of the every other person starts a podcast and they've got a built-in audience, and I don't know. It's interesting. It's like there's some sort of when I started, there still wasn't many podcasts. I started 6 years ago, and it was still a pretty small industry. Every actor and comedian hadn't started a podcast yet, but I still feel good because most of those podcasts go away.
Yeah, well,
You
even to
know,
this day, I heard that, like the average that there's actually thousands of podcasts starting every week, but most of them don't last more than 10 or 12 episodes.
right.
So,
You're
um, I would say 2020, I think probably was a proliferation because, again, people have nothing to do.
Oh,
You know,
definitely. I think that blew up the industry. I thought I would be done in 2020 because I was doing the podcast in my just at home and having people come and hang out. People I knew
Mhm.
in the neighborhood, and then I discovered a podcast service like Podmatch, but a different one, and so I found out I could get people from all over the world, and I was just so amazed at how many people would be interested in coming on um, a small podcast. Still amazed that people like yourself want to come on and talk, and plus I enjoy it, so I keep doing it.
Yeah, and it really is. And I think that's with anything, we should all be enjoying what we loving what we do
Yeah,
and
I
enjoying it.
100% agree. Yeah, because I know there's a lot of people that I can't get on the podcast because they have the only way they're going to do something like that is because they have an agenda. And most of the people now that go on the Joe Rogan show are like people are fighting to get on there because they have a certain thing they're trying to promote, whatever it is. Um, Same with any big podcast, it seems like. So it's interesting. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's wild. So how did you get into being an agent, a talent agent? Because that seems like a really hard thing to me to do.
It is. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think the hardest thing is that it's a cutthroat business, and that was something, I'll be completely candid, I was not prepared for. I thought it was going to be fun. You know, I love actors; it's going to be great. But there, it is very cutthroat, and there are times where it can be a little on the brutal side. You know, and where the competition and sometimes the territorial aspect of things.
Oh, right, right. Well, I spent a little time in Hollywood as a PA working on a show called The Tick, which was an animated cartoon, absolutely brilliant, and other things. And so I ran into every side of Hollywood, I'll say. When I watch, I don't know if you've seen the show called The Studio, but it's based on real stuff. It's really based on like how bad Hollywood can be, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, there's the good, bad, and the ugly. The good. What I started, because I always had an interest in the performing arts at some level. I was in a high school drama club for a couple of years. I took some theater and acting classes in college as electives, but I was really determined to just be a psychologist. Clinical psychologist, research, teaching. I've always wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My father and brothers were all football coaches. So I think the coaching and teaching is kind of in my blood. And so I was really determined to do that. Now, I landed when I was in grad school, when I was finishing my master's degree, I took a chance and found myself doing an internship at the Sally Jester Raphael.
Wow.
To this day, that was like I'm not ashamed to say it, but this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and talk shows were in their heyday. And, during a summer vacation, I really had nothing to do, so I was watching talk shows. And I just happened to stumble on Sally's website, the show's website, and they had like a resident therapist on the show, like who would come in, on a weekly basis. She was like a regular employed by the show, so they had an area to contact her, on the site, like, ask a question. So I just randomly said I had no intention that this was going to go anywhere. I had no expectations. Said, hi, I'm a fan of your work. I'm a grad school future clinical psychologist. I'm in training. I would love to know if you're looking for any opportunities for us to collaborate. I signed it and I clicked send, and it was a website form. So I walked away. I'm not, and I didn't for like 2 months. And so I was getting ready to go to class, and I was like, I'm just checking my email. And I logged in, and I saw an email with like a response to your website comment. I didn't know what it was for. Clicked it open, and there was my letter in the beginning. And below it was from her, the therapist, who was a regular commentator on the show, said, where are you located? And I said, New Jersey, back in New Jersey. And I said, great. Well, can you call me tomorrow? I'm looking for an intern.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I called her.
Timing.
I met with her, and then that was my spring semester of coincidentally, she left the show, and then the show got canceled soon after. But it was a good experience for me. It was eye-opening because it was my first kind of like taste of show business.
Right.
And I saw a lot of infighting. This is like my first main exposure to how a person's persona and their real life personality are completely different.
Oh, yes.
So I can just tell you that Raphael is a lot different than what you see in her show.
Right.
So, and it was like, so much so, like, first of all, she reads from a teleprompter, and she wears an earpiece, so they tell her what to ask, what to say, what comment to make, where to stand, and they also have a lot of directions for the audience. Like, I need you to applaud. They'll have signs up like to the audience wrangling: applaud here, sigh here, moan here, groan here, laugh here. Like, so it's a much choreographed show. It's a production.
Right. Right.
Really a stage production. And so I was like, really surprised. I'm like, I'm never going to work in here again. And it's all fabricated. Now the stories are real, but at least the ones I've encountered, the stories were real. The struggles were real with these people. What was a bit manufactured was the drama.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
They separated, there was a couple fighting. They separated the couple. They had a team working with one member, a team working with the other one, and they were instigating them prior to the show, so that
it's nuts.
You would get fireworks on stage. It was all it was manufactured. One case that stood out for me was this husband had some gambling problems. He got himself clean and straight and narrow, but he came. They applied to be on a show a couple of months prior to it, because he wanted to apologize to his wife and make things right, because he put the both of them in debt. However, prior to the show, they did straighten it out. They did reconcile, but they still were invited to the show. They're like, hey, let's do this. Let's have fun. So they were already made up. So when they separated, they had the wife and the husband in a separate room. So during the wife said, I just want to let you know, we made up and everything's great. They told her, said, you are not to say that on stage. He's going to come out and he's going to grovel to you, and you're going to tell him that you're kicking him out of the house until you leave, And she's like, but I'm not, we're married. And they're like, you better do this, or we're not, or you're not getting a plane ticket back. You're going to find your own way back home.
Oh my God. Jeez.
So he was blindsided by it, of course, because, they had already made up. So when I called, my job was kind of like behind the scenes. The intern was just calling up and seeing how the guests were doing. Were they in counseling? How was counseling going? And it's interesting because a lot of guests were telling me, like, I never want to hear from you guys again. Lose my number in a sense. And this guy, kind of said that, but he was more explanation. He was a nice man. He said to me, like, look, he's like, I never want to hear from you guys again. But he goes, I'll tell you this. We're made up at this time. We're already rebuilding our marriage together. And they created this drama and humiliated the both of us. And what also I kept hearing a lot of things was, like, when you first got there, they would, like, shower you with, like, food, drinks in a green room, whatever you wanted was there. They treat you. As soon as the show was over, it was like, okay, let's get you back to the airport. Get out, in a sense. It was like, sort of like, we're done with you.
Right.
Now, when I talked to, at that time, I was very surprised. But now, looking back into it, it completely makes sense. And this is kind of like almost every talk show was like that. So no surprise there anymore. What really shocked me, though, because another one of my duties was answering emails from the show. Like, Sally had an advice column where, like, if you wanted life advice from Sally. What was really funny about this, even I noticed when I was in grad school, I'm like, what qualifications does this lady have? Nothing.
Well, even watching it on TV, I'm surprised that people would want advice
That's
from
what I'm saying,
her.
too. I'm like,
what?
I'm like,
what?
If you had any idea.
Oh my God.
This is the last person you want advice from. But the inbox was flooded, with, and some of these people were going through, it's like, full on crisis. So I would be answering an email, and I would be kind of like, because they would kind of put like their location in the form. So then I would, like, kind of find them a resource. They're like, maybe you want to check out this resource or this hotline in your area. Boom. Now, we were told never to sign our name because it was supposed to look like it was coming from Sally.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah.
So, and that was like, so when that happened, it was over. 9/11, it's the same year, 9/11. And the person that was my supervisor at Sally was starting to really hit the ground running, volunteering and doing crisis intervention, advocacy, counseling for a lot of rescue workers, their families, displaced workers and their families. So she called me and a bunch of other people. She's like, I need help. So that's what I did for a few months, and then I was hired for American Red Cross. So during this time, I started meeting with so many actors because we were working alongside a lot of actors, like because people were producing documentaries, short form videos, to kind of like what we were doing, and I really enjoyed like just watching things being made and kind of brought back my memories from college and high school. So I pursued a little bit of acting myself, like, well, maybe this will be something fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I did enjoy it to some level, but what was really a lot of fun for me was being behind the scenes, working with actors. And so even while I was an actor, I would find myself connecting maybe an actor or a producer I met on this set with somebody I met on that set. Like, you guys should collaborate, or like I would overhear them saying, I'm looking for a redheaded female. I'm like, I just worked with a redheaded female last week. Here's her information. And then somebody pointed out to me, one of the people, like, oh, I wish you were my agent. So the bell started ringing, going over my head. Now, at this time, I was just beginning to pursue a PhD program. And I was also hired to be an adjunct instructor at a community college for psychology.
So you had a bit of a full plate.
Yeah, I had a full plate, but I was like, I'm going to do this. So I've always wanted to kind of like own my own business. So it's kind of like contemplating, business should I start? There you go. I'm gonna manage and represent actors. 2004, that's what started my first company. And now I was teaching, and I really enjoyed teaching. So I was like, well, I'm going to complete my dream here, which was go for it, finish my PhD, go for my PhD. So I did that. My plate was full because I was a PhD student, part-time college instructor, and a business owner. All combined. Now, thankfully, my PhD program was online, a distance, learning program. So I don't know if I would have been able to do everything if it was like a face-to-face where I had to commute to classes and actually have live classes. I don't know if I would have been able to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I did all, all the clinical psychology. And then when it came time for my dissertation, it was like, well, what should I do my dissertation on? And one thing that I was noticing a lot with actors, even some of the students I was working with, was self-sabotage. And I'm like, so that was kind of like half my direction of my PhD program was examining self-sabotage in performing artists. And that was what my dissertation was on.
Mm-hmm.
Which I now found, which is really fulfilling for me, because now I'm able to combine both my loves. Acting, show business, with psychology. And I then kind of started to come to the conclusion that I just want to finish my PhD. Because in order to get a clinical degree, you have to do in our state was a 750-hour practicum and then followed by a 2,000-hour intern. Now, if I was just doing a PhD program, this would have been doable. But I was just also hired now full-time to teach. So I had a business, a full-time teaching, load, and the possible intern, and it wasn't going to happen. And so I had to make a decision that I'm just going to go for a PhD and with a specialization of education and research, and just so I can get it over with. I did that. So technically, I'm a clinical psychologist by training because I finished all the coursework that was required for clinical psychology. So, but I'm not licensed or, ever going to be. I don't, have a desire for that now. But that's how I kind of started in both, fields. And I still teach to this day and I really enjoy it. So,
Well, that seems like a perfect training for working in the entertainment industry anywhere, but especially for being an agent, because you are dealing with people that, like you say, self-sabotage, fear of success, imposter. There's all kinds of things that entertainers tend to come up with to sort of block their career. Um, how many,
absolutely.
yeah, how many people do you work with?
Well, I have right now I work with about 200 actors.
Wow,
That's a lot.
that's a lot.
Yeah. Now I'm not. There's a difference. Like I'm an agent, not a manager. So technically, even though I kind of work as a manager, my day to day thing is just to find them work. Like a lot of times, the difference between like an agent and manager, even though they're terms kind of loosely intertwined, a manager is more hands on and will kind of give like life advice, career advice, and work work on that brand imaging.
Right,
And an
right.
agent really typically is just finding day to day work.
So do a lot of your clients have managers also?
Some do.
Some do.
Yeah, and some don't, and that's fine. I mean, there's no like really, a specific way to do that or anything.
Well, do you ever get in, is it ever hard? Do you ever have to sort of work around a manager? Or is there, things ever come up where the
Uh,
manager is getting in the way of something?
Sometimes it really depends. I mean, sometimes that managers can be hands on in a sense.
Hmm.
So the difference is typically, I mean, when it was first designed and conceptualized, like the idea of having a manager and an agent. An agent is someone who's licensed to find work. So technically, like I'm licensed as an employment agent first. Like I had to actually go for a license.
I always forget that, and it's true in most states that you have to be licensed to be an agent. Like you can't
Yeah,
just say you're an agent
no,
and go out and get
no.
work.
Anybody can
Yeah.
be a manager too, though. That's the difference.
Okay.
And so what? Because I started off as a manager, in 2004 when I formed my company. But I realized how limiting it was. Now it's a little bit different now, but back, 20 years ago, it was a manager couldn't really negotiate a contract.
Right. This is something I knew about a long time ago. I haven't dealt with managers or agents in a long time, but I remember that managers can't actually book people. At least they
Yeah,
couldn't
now
at
it's
that time.
now the lines have blurred a lot lately.
Okay.
I'd say the past, 10, 15 years, the lines have blurred. But typically that was like the idea. Manager is supposed to be more of a hands-on support. And an agent was the one that doing the day-to-day work, and they would communicate together and team up and all of that. Now, some do, some still are like that, but there's some managers that are acting like agents, and those can sometimes get in the way.
So,
And what I also find interesting, which not all, because there's a lot of great managers, but there's also some managers that I feel I know the clients better than they do, and like that shouldn't be.
right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or they're coming out to me for advice on how they communicate to the manager. I'm like, should be really the other way around. But like you come to your manager to kind of need advice or communicate to your agent, not the other way around. So my whole advice when an actor is joining a manager, I'm like, it depends. It's up to you because managers take more commission. Like an agent can only take 10% commission. That's what we're regulated to do. A manager can take up to 15 or even 20. There's no regulation there.
So they can take whatever
they want.
a client will give
Yeah,
them,
yeah,
basically, whatever they
exactly.
want. Yeah.
But usually the standard is like 15%.
Okay.
Now, I always say, are they earning that 15% by at least giving you the guidance rather than worrying about submitting you? Because technically, they're not supposed to be submitting for work. They're supposed to be, guiding you, giving you guidance, meeting with you on a regular basis, providing you as much support as you need, and advocating you to their agent. You
Okay,
know,
that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
They,
supposed to be where the manager would be like, teaming up with the agent, like collaborating up. And because usually the first thing I do, if I sign a client and have a manager, I will reach out to the manager, be like, hey, would you like to jump on a call if I don't know them,
hmm
and
hmm
just dump 15 minutes to talk. But some of them are, some of them, aren't that open, which is interesting. To that.
Yeah, that is very interesting. It seems like that would be super important for them to be
Well,
open to that.
and now you would think that.
I would think that as, if they were my manager, I would want them to work with the agent. I would think that would be important. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was watching a podcast with Kevin Pollak. You're probably familiar with him, famous
Yeah.
actor. And he was talking about agents and managers, and he obviously does well. We think he does well. In his mind, he has to work really hard to get work, which is always surprising to me,
Hmm.
but that's how Hollywood works. And he was saying, in his opinion, agents spend 80% of their time with their top clients, and the other 80% of the time left they spend looking for clients. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah. I mean, I don't like, I've literally, like, I'm at a point now where I don't actively look for clients anymore. And I even said to myself and even said to my staff that if we get no new signings, I'll be okay.
Hmm.
Because because right now the industry, we're in a tough industry, as we know. I've got enough on my hands right now to be working on this. Now, if somebody comes across my desk that's out absolutely brilliant, I'm going to take a meeting. Fine, but I'm not actively looking at the moment
Oh, okay.
because I want to
So,
really take care of the people I have now, and that's important to me. Because again, if they're not getting work, why am I going to be really trying to find them, other people to bring on? But I would say definitely that's the number. Maybe 20%. Not even for me, it's a little under 20% because again, I'm not actively looking right now for new talent. I'm not looking. I'm looking, really to take care of who I have now. So, but yeah, again, we, the truth is that there's also a truth with most agents, which is, and I would say almost the non-pleasant side of my business are the goodbyes that we have to make
oh yeah. Well,
because
I'm sure it happens, right?
it's part of the business and it's part
Right.
of the reality of the industry
Hmm.
is it's like people are going to come and go,
Of
and
course.
for both things, like some people will leave me to sign with another agent, some people will move to Los Angeles, which I don't cover Los Angeles, so that would be the ending of the contract or ending our business relationship. Um, and then there's also times every few months where I'm going to go through my list and say, okay, is this working or not? And then have to send and have a bit of a conversation where it's like we're ending this professional, but and it could be for a variety of reasons. Just really, the nutshell is there's nothing happening. There's no momentum.
And is that because the person has um, doesn't seem motivated to do
That's
things,
part of
or
it.
is part of it?
That's definitely part of it. Like if I notice that, then I'm gonna probably distance myself and cut that you know or release that person in the roster because it's not working. I mean, I'm definitely passionate for my clients' careers, but I shouldn't want it more than you do. And
No, that's true.
if I
Absolutely.
feel like you are much more wanting to be successful, then we we have a conversation that needs to be made. So that's part of it. Also, if just there's not that like if they're not taking that initiative, like because typically as an actor you have to be flexible, which means that if your marketing materials aren't working, if several months or we're submitting the same headshot, the same reel, the same demos, and nothing is happening, then we need to change. We need to change the headshots. We need to change your demos, recut them at whatever it is. But we've got to diversify and differentiate because obviously there's that's not working. So some actors are let's do it. Let's do. Others will argue or procrastinate.
Right. Right.
Like I know of actors, they're not on my obviously not on my roster, that are still using the same headshot that are like 8, 9 years old. That was in 2016, 2017. Now, generally, maybe you still look the same, but you need new headshots. I mean, as an adult actor, I mean, kids need headshots every 6 months to a year because they grow at much faster rates. Adults actors need at least about 2 years, maybe no more than 3. Need new headshots. That's just the way it is. They change.
And also, don't headshots change a little bit in what people are looking for, like the style that
Yeah,
photographers are using,
the
yeah.
photographer style, the style of roles. Like for example, New York is very cinematic and gritty. So the glamour shots aren't going to work. If especially if you're looking for anything in film. So we need to see gritty. We need to see cinematic. We need to kind of tell, an expressive story. And if it's just a generic, this looks cute, it's not going to work. So as an actor, the one thing you should always do when you're getting headshots, because usually what you'll do is you go to a photographer, you'll get like 100 to 150, like in your contact sheet.
Right.
You
They
should
still do
not.
that?
They still well, it's digital now. Everything's digital.
Yeah, yeah,
So you'll get sometimes upwards of 200 or 300. Sometimes
right.
digital shots.
Yeah, it's harder, it seems like.
It's
'Cause-
harder,
yeah,
but the idea is so usually the one thing I will not when I tell my client, advise my clients like we should be picking or at least as asking our opinion. But of course I say don't send me the 300 shots. I don't have time to do that. Send me even your top 30 that you like.
oh yeah, yeah. I was
Then
thinking top 10, but yeah,
top 10. Well,
yeah,
even top 30 because I can take
yeah,
a look at that really quick.
yeah.
Because usually as an actor, we have like most actors have between 2 and 3, maybe 4 different headshots, like, depending on the type of role, depending on the style of the project that they're being submitted on. So I'm like, okay, pick these, and I'll help you narrow them down. The one thing, it's all great. I know you want to do this, actors, but if you're listening, do not ask your parents, do not ask grandma, do not ask your aunts and uncles, or even your partner to select the headshots because while they're gonna have good intentions, they're not gonna understand the business. So what might look like a cute picture may not work in what because it's different it's different than a photo, a glamour shot. It's not a glamour shot, and you should also only be going to a photographer who does actor headshots, not portraits, not glamour shots. Again, they're great, but it's different. It's a different type of photo.
It's very true. I mean, I see that with a lot of because I live in a small area. I see that a lot with people where they're using shots that are not really headshots as headshots. And also if I'm looking at an actor on IMDb, it's how I measure their success. I think it's subconscious. But when I go and I see someone and I'm like what has this actor done before? 200 things. And their headshot is 20 years old. It's like, okay, I know they don't need a headshot anymore. They're
Yeah.
nobody's asking to look at their headshot.
Well, I mean,
That's
in our
interesting.
business, yes. We still need digital. Everything's digital now. I mean, very rarely do actors need hard copies anymore.
Right,
You know, an
right.
actual 8x10, glossy 8x10. I mean, you still get a few printed up because if you go into a physical appointment, sometimes they may ask. And it's only that you only want to have one if they ask for it.
It's so interesting. The people that ask, the last person that asked, this was 10 years ago, but the last person that asked for my physical headshot was for theater. And I was kind of taken aback. It's like, really? You want a headshot? But we're right here auditioning. Okay, here you go. And then they said it didn't look anything like me. They cast me, but they
Yeah.
said my
Well,
worked out.
yeah. No, and sometimes it'll happen. But, you know, your headshot is the first thing, especially as an actor, is what's going to get you in the door. If your headshot isn't working, doesn't matter how great you are. They're not even going to be clicking on the demo, you know, because most of the
Right.
time, casting director, when they get the headshots, or when they get the submissions, now when they put a breakdown out for a role, even if it's a one-liner, in you know every role in every TV show, every film has to be is audition or read actors for, even if it's a one word, one line character. So they'll put a breakdown out, like a character list of specifications of what exactly they want, and they are going to get thousands just from agents and managers alone in New York or Los Angeles, or if they open the role for both coasts. So they're going to get anywhere from 1,000 up to 3,000 actors per role or
Wow.
role.
Wow. I don't know how they go through all that.
It's a system, and they go through it fast. I will tell you that right now.
Hmm.
Um, they the first thing they look for is because all these are thumbnails at first when they look at the submission. They're going to see thumbnail of headshot. That's the first thing. Now the thumbnail has to catch their attention.
Well, this is interesting because I have been to agent sites and where they have all their clients up. Um, they have a digital representation, and yes, you can see really fast, kind of
Yeah,
if the person's going to work or not. It's
yeah,
it's really quick.
and like even though we're saying like okay, there's 2 or 3 thousand, most casting records have such a system laid down they can look through and scan that list in less than an hour. Okay, yeah, and then they'll like okay, they'll scan the list and then they will mark put like a check mark against people that they might consider, and then they'll then go to the second phase where they'll look at your resume and then your reels. And then they make a smaller list from there about who people they're going to invite to read. So this is why you really need, first of all, a compelling headshot
Hmm.
and a compelling demo reel,
Right, right.
because otherwise you're just going to get lost in the sea of thousands of submissions.
I Since we're on the subject, how are people still doing live interviews, or do people want tapes more nowadays? I mean, it seems like
Since
everything I've seen lately, they want a tape. You,
it's very much tape, or if it's live, it's going to be over Zoom, or or other and that or some type of platform.
right,
But it's still
right.
going to be virtual. It's like a live virtual audition. But since 2020, and I knew this, and this is one thing bunch of us called because people were saying, "Oh, are they going to go back to when things open back up?" I was like, "No, not here."
Yeah, why?
Why?
It's so much easier. And really you can cast a wider net, it seems like. I mean, it's both things. I guess I should ask what you think. Do you think you can present yourself as well over Zoom or sending a tape? I mean, people used to do full productions when they sent a tape. People used to, when you sent a tape to a major movie director, you would hire a crew to tape you on
Yeah.
film. But nowadays it's literally people's phones. So
Yeah, well, most phones have really good cameras on. Like
true, true.
the later phone models now have real. I mean, there's actually what I found too interesting is some movies have been filmed on phone cameras because like the most sophisticated like phone cameras. So
I'm still waiting to see that movie filmed on a phone. I'm surprised we haven't seen a full movie that's advertised as, this was done on da da da, whatever.
I think sometimes what may be happening is that they may be being filmed, but they're not going to say it. That it
Oh,
was
that's,
filmed.
yeah. Hmm.
But the thing is that, and I've always felt like self tapes were had its advantages and disadvantages. The advantages were, there was more people can be seen for a role because when the auditions were in person, which most of them were at least in New York. So if you wanted to work as an actor in New York, you had to physically be close to New York because you had to go in to a casting director's office or studio to read for a role. To physically, be able to read for a role. They weren't looking at tapes. So that was a limitation. The difference now is that it's more virtual. So you can see many more people. You don't have to limit to like maybe 10 to 12 people per role. You can now see up to 50, 60 people per role, tape per role.
Oh, right. I guess I didn't think about that.
So the
Yeah.
advantage is that a lot of actors are having chances now that they may not have gotten, because it was such a small number. On the other hand, though, because there's more competition, your tape and your performance on that tape needs to be even better than average if you want to have a chance of standing out. And one of the challenges, like, and this has kind of been like implied, but not most cast directors are not going to admit it. But the implied thing is like if they watch, like let's say they get 50 tapes, if they watch like the first five and already find what they want, they may not even watch the other 45, which is unfair, but the
Yeah, but
truth.
it makes sense because their
Yeah.
time is limited. Yeah.
And especially if it's
Yeah.
a London scene. Now, there was an article that early this year that brought some controversy. An Atlanta-based casting director who works on like Tyler Perry's projects, interviewing another casting director in LA when they were chatting on a podcast. And one of the casting directors said, like, I don't, if I'm watching a tape, I put a tape on and I'm bored within the first 10 seconds, I'm turning it off. Or even 5 seconds, I'm turning the tape off. And did that anger a lot of actors? Because a lot of actors, I worked hard on that tape, and I saw it as like, okay, maybe that wording could have been a bit different, but the truth is like, because I even myself, like, I'm looking at a reel, I know within the first 10 seconds whether I'm going to possibly call this actor in or not.
Right, right.
I'm bored. I'm going to turn it off.
It is unfortunate but that's
Yeah.
the reality. I was
Or even if I
saying,
go
yeah,
to like a showcase and an actor performs either a song, a monologue, or a scene, I'll know within 10 seconds, yay or nay. And at first, when I was doing this, when I first started like doing this, I thought, is something wrong with my attention span really that bad? That I'll know, that I'm making these judgments. And then when I talk to other like playwrights or directors, and they say like when they watch these even theater auditions, they'll know within 10 seconds. The scene could be a couple minutes long, but they'll know within 10 seconds whether this actor is going to be getting a callback or not.
well, and there was a day when they were doing it live, and after that 10 seconds, they'd say, thank you.
Yeah. Or, we
So,
saw that.
yeah. So actually, we should be grateful that we're not seeing them do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to experience that as an actor anymore. Thank you. That'll
Yeah.
be all. Yeah.
And it's just we're going to either turn off your tape and delete it now.
Right.
But also another challenge is too, because at least if you had an audition in person, they would direct you. Sometimes they give you slight direction. Maybe now do to read a second time. in this way. Sometimes, not all the time, but you don't get that with a self-tape.
Well,
And
that's true. Almost every audition I've been to, I don't think I've ever been to an audition live, and it's been a while, but in the old days, where they didn't, even just to be polite, ask for another take on it. They didn't
yeah, I
always
mean,
say what
well,
that was. Sometimes it would just try something else.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because a lot of things, I mean, part of the casting process is to see how an actor could do something different. Can they be directable? So that's most a lot of success too. If you're going to land a job too, you could do a great take on a scene, but if you're not coachable, effective, not able to be coachable, that's going to hurt your chances of getting the job.
Yeah, I've heard this from acting coaches and acting teachers also. That's exactly it. It's like you know, don't take it personally if they're asking for something else. They
No,
want to
not at
see
all.
something else. Yeah,
That's your job. I mean, that's
that's your
why it's
job. Yeah.
that's and if you think about it, if we break down the word semantically, casting director, they're going to be giving, because they want to see how are you going to be on set, because again, once you're on set, you could, or even on stage, when you're rehearsing, you could be doing something one way and the director comes out and says, no, you got to do it another way. Can you do it? This is where training is so important, because again, you have to be kind of like not so much married to that one approach of playing a character. You got to be open to change. So usually now the advice is with self-tape, if it's a quick scene, do it a couple of times. But make sure each time you do it is slightly different. Like I don't want to be looking at an audition tape where you're doing it 3 takes and they're all the same.
Yeah, what's the point? That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it has to be different. And I mean completely different. Because again, that's what would be like in an actual audition. So, and I'll see some actors saying, oh, casting directors are getting lazy by doing this. We want to be back in the room. And I'm like, what's ironic about that? I'm like, you guys were complaining about having to travel to audition. Now you're also complaining about self-tape.
Well, it's actors. They're going to complain.
Yeah.
That's-
And I mean, I
yeah.
get it. And I get it.
Yeah.
Audition can be tough. It's not easy. Um, it's really not that easy to be. It's not an easy business. But if it's something that you're really bothering you, then this is where that conversation is why are you doing it? Why are
Right.
you?
Right. Because
And
that's a good point. Because when I have done self-tapes, as torturous as they are, um, I mean, same with auditions. And one of my acting teachers told me this. Um, Whenever you go to an audition, you're acting. You get to act. You get to
yeah,
act in front of people. Sometimes you get to act in front of some really good people. And so that's acting,
well,
right?
and that's the point of it. You're doing this. It's not about a place of being judged. You get an opportunity to perform. Use it. Take advantage of it. You get to perform. Use those 2 minutes to show the director what you can do.
Right. Right.
And therefore, and that's what some of the best character actors, even the ones that may not be A-listers, but by seeing them and things, they will tell you that they don't look at auditions as auditions. They look as an opportunity to work for 2 minutes, do what they love, and that's it. And I think, that's why I kind of like with the actors that are complaining about something, like, no, look, you get an opportunity to act. Do it.
Yeah. It took me a while to come to that idea, but once I did, it made auditions a lot more fun.
And
Yeah.
I would reckon when you have that when you make it more fun and look at it in a different way, I'd be likely to bet that your callback and booking ratio is going to increase because you're not going to be so much in your head focusing. Because a lot of actors, when they're nervous, you can tell because they're not even listening to their scene partner. They're thinking like, "What's my next line?" So they're saying their line, then the other characters say their line, and then they're focused on what's my next line. And it becomes such an inauthentic conversation.
Right. Right.
And it's like,
Yeah.
and so a big thing now, I'm not an acting teacher or director, but sometimes I'll offer my feedback is a lot of times for a lot of young actors is you need to work on your reactions more because this should be a conversation, and in a typical conversation, you're reacting. Because a lot of times actors forget, of course they've rehearsed the scene, hundreds of times, but you almost have to, when you're performing, really act like you heard it for the first time. That line, the other character's line. So you've got to react to it.
Yeah, that's always been hard for me because especially more as I age, I have even a harder time memorizing lines, but I've always had a hard time memorizing lines. So I'm always kind of struggling um, with that, but that's part of acting. You're acting, so act like you're listening at the very least. If you are listening, you'll have a different take.
Well, and not
Which is
only
good.
that, but it'll look real. Because now maybe the
Yeah,
audience who may not have an acting background, and audiences may think when they see this, is going to think something's off. Like I'm not buying it. Whatever they're performing, I'm not buying it, and it's because they're in their head too much. They're too much in the analytical brain, and so sometimes even what relates to that note is get out of your head. Actors, get out of your head and just let this go organically. Because again, if you're thinking about so much what you're going to say next, you're not even paying attention to what is said. And I've heard this a lot from even a lot of acting teachers that were somewhat even established working actors that would say half of acting is reacting.
right, right. Well, I've even heard from many famous actors that all of acting is is reacting.
Yeah.
Um,
So if you're
Eastwood
not reacting well,
Eastwood used to cut his lines. He would ask for less lines because he thought we don't need all these lines to make this scene work.
yeah,
What's on my face is going to make it work. It was really interesting. It's interesting. Yeah.
yeah, because and sometimes if you think about some of the most Oscar or Emmy award winning moments are nonverbal. Sometimes
Right. Right.
you know it,
Or
it's it's really because it's the emotion. It's that's what makes an award winning performance is when you really feel the emotion of the character. The only way they're going to do that if it's authentic, or at least appearing authentic. Otherwise, if we know you're because even though the average viewer almost, we all know it's fake when we're going to see either a theater show or put on a movie or a TV show. We know it's fake. We know it's acting, but yet it's so good that we forget that.
it's so interesting too because when we see a really good performance, I was just watching a show about the making of The Godfather, which was about 50% BS, but it was interesting to see how hard it was for them to make that. And so then my wife had never seen it. I was like, we really have to watch the movie. And when you watch it, it's like, well, these performances are nothing like real people, but they are entirely convincing. It's
Yeah.
just bizarre.
Well, you get it's a suspension of disbelief that comes in.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
like even we'll give you a more modern day example. The Sopranos was another example of that. Great show, great actors, great performers, but not really real life. Like because it's interesting how like those people. I'm born and raised in New Jersey.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
Rarely heard people talk like that in real life. Like that thick of an accent, Jersey accent.
That much of an accent, yeah. They
Yeah, no. Or like Jersey Boys, like the reality, like nobody talks like that really. You know, and that's the idea of, and this kind of goes back to a question you asked when we first began with hypnosis, because it's a suspension of disbelief, and this is where people say, "Well, I can't be hypnotized." Like, you ever sit and watch a movie and get caught up by emotions? Yes, you've been hypnotized. So, um, that's what, because we know we're watching something fake, but yet we're moved to tears, anger, scare, whatever it is, even laughing.
Well, we've been watching this show called The Pit. Have you heard of that show?
Yeah,
So
I'm Mac. Yeah, HBO Mac.
yeah, it's about an emergency room, and it takes place each hour is an hour, and you get done watching that, and you're just completely on the edge. And then you got to remember that none of that's real. That's all.
Yeah, none of it's real.
None of it's real. Yeah.
And none of these actors have any clue about medicine,
Right.
themselves.
Right.
They're only going by the scripts that are written, but even the writers, they're using consultants that are like, tightening things up, to make things sound remotely correct.
Right.
And
Right.
I even heard sometimes on a lot of these medical shows that even though the information may sound good, it may not actually factually correct.
I think, well, I've heard before that they do things wrong on purpose, so people don't think they can go home and do this stuff.
Yeah.
So they don't.
And it shouldn't. I mean, it shouldn't be, again, otherwise we'd be seeing a lot of people doing some crazy stuff at home.
Yes, definitely. No one should try and repair their own injuries that need to be in an emergency room. Yeah. But I thought it was funny because the last episode, I think that it started in the first episode, but the last episode they caught a rat, and this one guy grew up on a farm, so he caught the rat and took care of it right away, and everyone in the emergency room was freaked out. And I don't know, I just thought, wow, doesn't anyone like rats in New York?
Yeah. I would think if you're a medical professional, and I'm thinking to myself, you really can't be that freaked out by a rodent.
Right. Yeah.
Especially if you're working in a major city hospital. I mean, because especially in New York, or I know this is not from New York, but a lot of times, if you're in a major city, rodents are a daily thing that you encounter.
Rodents are everywhere.
Yeah. So why is everyone freaking out, especially medical professionals? Because if I'm going to a doctor and I'm waiting in a waiting room and I see a nurse or a doctor freaking out over a rat, I'm probably going to go out and go find another place to go get medicine from. Because it's like, really?
Exactly. That was what I was thinking. Really? Yeah. Everyone's freaked out by a rat, and no one else could do what this one guy did. It's like, but yeah, that's a good. I mean, in any city, I lived in LA for a long time, and that's not known for having rats. But you've got tons of restaurants, and so you've got rats. That's just
or you're gonna have
other
critters, or you're gonna have other road type of critters in the road. I mean, that's the way it is.
Well, in LA, they have coyotes and mountain lions. And so, they got big.
They got bigger.
They got bigger things. Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. So before I forget, there is something you had in your notes actually about how can an actor nail a part in 3 seconds.
3 seconds.
Did I get that right? How actors nail something in the first 3 seconds? I'm assuming we're talking about an audition here.
Yeah, the first thing is grabbing them in there, pulling them right in. So that's kind of like what I was talking about earlier about the first 3 seconds of a reel. It has to look real and compelling. I don't want to see these long musical montages like in reels, and it's got and when you start a reel as an actor, you want to grab the first 3 seconds should be on you, not on somebody else. 5, 6 seconds later you come in. It should be your first line, and it has to look real and authentic. It doesn't have to be overly theatrical. We don't want that, especially when it's on camera. But it has to be real. So I would say be real and authentic.
That makes a lot of sense. And how long is a reel? Like, how long is too long for a reel? And how long is too short?
Well, we don't want something 10 seconds. Obviously that's too short. But it shouldn't be longer than 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's short.
Now, I mean, some scenes, if you're doing it like a self-tape, and sometimes the scene can be pages long. But I will tell you one thing. I mean, as harsh as it's going to sound, most casting directors, if you don't grab their attention, especially if they give you a self-tape that's 5 or 6 pages long, they're not going to watch the whole tape.
And this has kind of amazed me. I've used Backstage a couple of times. I don't think it's a very good
I
service.
don't either.
Yeah, I don't think it's very good, but because they always seem to be not very professional productions. But yeah, I've seen 2 or 3 page audition scripts,
Yeah.
and I just wonder, like, what are you doing? You don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I know they're trying to get the full, because sometimes they may not, especially now with the tapes and everything. If they're not going to have callbacks, they want to send the final tape to like the director, the produce, the network or the producers, and they want, obviously those producers and directors are going to see the full scene. But I can tell you one thing: if you don't grab their attention in the first third of that, next,
Right, right.
and I
Yeah.
heard this too because back when I told you when I was working in a talk show, I was talking to some talk show producers that they used to get a lot of tapes from like people wanted to be guest experts.
Oh, uh-huh. Hmm.
And that what you had to do if you want to be like, let's say, even if you wrote a book and you wanted to be in, a talk show, you had to send a tape, a videotape. This time when they had videotape, a videotape of you talking about your book. And I heard a lot of producers will say, if they're not interested in that 10 seconds, they're ejecting the tape and throwing it right out.
That is really interesting. Even myself, running this massive podcast that I have here, I always look to see. I give it more than 10 seconds, but I always look to see if people can speak because it's a podcast, and so I always check. I
Mm-hmm.
hope they have a video presentation because I do it video. If someone came in and had a huge following of some kind, I wouldn't, I wouldn't care. But even me, just doing a podcast, I have to see like, okay, is this
Yeah,
person?
well,
Are you going to grab my attention for, uh, an hour?
and no, that or because what's the point of filming something if people are going to be turning it off within the first 10 seconds?
Yeah, yeah.
Saying I'll catch the next episode. But that's not going to help you out. Um. So yeah, well, that's the whole thing too, and that's why it's not. It sounds more shallow than it is, but it's the truth. You have to be compelling. So if you want to get within the first few seconds, you've got to make it real. And I'm not talking about over the top acting. It just has to look real. If you're taping, even to be a waitress, and your line is like, do you want more drinks? That has to be compelling enough to, okay, can I really see you, as a waitress? If you come in,
Harrison Ford has a famous story about that when he was in his first movie and he was a waiter and he had one line. And I think it was his agent that told him, "You'll never get anywhere like that. You look like a waiter." He said,
yeah.
"Well, yeah, isn't that the point?"
Well, yeah. I mean, well, that's the whole thing. It's like, well, thank you. That's what I'm going out for. If I'm going
Yeah,
from
that's what I'm going
word to
for.
waiter, I
Yeah.
should like the part. Now that doesn't mean that you have to go over the top and really dress like that. I think sometimes some actors make the mistake where I need to dress like this because a lot of times I would see, or even just observing tape with other people on other projects people working on. They're looking for a doctor or a nurse, and people will be taping in scrubs. I'm like, no, don't do that. You
Oh,
don't have
see,
to.
that's interesting because I guess I hear mixed things about that. There's always what was dressed for the part. It's been a long time
I mean,
adage.
what you can do is wear a neutral outfit. You don't have to physically like wear scrubs.
Right, right.
But I mean, I wouldn't at the same time. If you're going to be a nurse, I wouldn't show up in a suit and tie. Because that wouldn't look,
Oh,
typical.
okay.
But
Yeah.
I would definitely use like business casual, casual clothing, because it's more about your delivery. Like, can you really be believable as a nurse? Can you be believable as a doctor? Can you be believable as a lawyer? Can you believe as a waiter? That's what it really boils down to.
It boils down to that. And also, something I want to mention, since we're talking a lot about auditions, is that this helped me a lot. This has helped me. I haven't auditioned. I don't audition much anymore. I occasionally get parts from happenstance. But when I was auditioning, and if I ever audition again, the thing to really keep in mind is that they want to hire you, right?
Yes.
They're looking for that person. If it's you, great. They don't have to keep going through tapes.
Yeah, and your job is this is what I would say as an actor. Your job is to make their jobs easy. Is that we found who we want. So they're on your side.
They're on your side. That's yeah.
Yeah, they're not scared, and I think that's something that the mistake actors make when they approach agents, managers, or casting directors. There's that illusion of superiority there, or that power. And no, like when I watch a demo tape for an actor, or if I open up a submission, or if I go to a showcase, or if I take a meeting, I'm hoping that you're going to be my next signing, the one I'm going to sign next. I really do. But, and the same thing with a casting director. If they're looking at a tape, or when someone come in, they're hoping that you are the next one. So help them get that, by being, yourself, and really being prepared and not being so nervous.
And especially now, I guess with self-tapes, there's really no reason to get nervous.
Right.
Because if you're feeling nervous, just keep doing it, right? You can do it again.
Yeah.
You're not nervous. Yeah, you're just staring into a camera, which can be nerve-wracking. I don't know why. I can sit here and talk to you with a camera and a microphone on. But doing this social media thing where you're just staring into a camera and talking to nobody, for some reason, that's much harder. That's a lot harder.
Yeah, because then you're wondering, is anybody seeing this? Are they responding? What are they saying behind my back? Sort of thing.
I guess that's it. I just don't have the same energy if I'm just. I mean, even if I'm auditioning and doing a self tape, there's a reason to do it. But yeah, I don't know. It's bizarre. Sitting here talking to a computer would not be the same. So I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you.
We have actually been going on for a minute. I don't think I need to do a 3-hour podcast, and I have a list of questions, and I'm very happy that most people at this point in my podcast, most people are not listening to the entire podcast, so they don't know these questions.
Yeah.
So this is like just some random. It just I don't know. Sometimes it tells me a little more about a person. It's fun. Just some random questions out of the blue. Do you like turtles?
Yeah, they're okay.
Okay. That was the same as the last person I had. Do you have your own podcast, or have you done your own podcast?
I'm working on it, actually.
You're working on it. Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because I never thought that earlier this year. I was like, nah, I'm just going to be a guest, spread my out. But I realized how much I love doing this. Like, this is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Yeah.
And I'm like, I should really have my own, where I can also, do some solo shows and interview other people too. So my podcast is going to be called Mental Rehearsal, and it's going to be tools for struggling actors and actors who struggle. So it's going to be geared towards the actor that's struggling maybe to find work, but also maybe that A-list or that, B-list actor who's struggling with like imposter syndrome. Because that was the one thing I found. A lot of A-list actors still deal with imposter.
It's really interesting. I watch a lot of actors on podcasts because I do enjoy podcasts. Most of the podcasts now are on YouTube, so you get to see, see them, how they look today, and almost everyone says they have imposter syndrome that they're still dealing with, and no matter how big a star, it really surprises me. I'm
Mhm.
always amazed. It's like you've done that, and you still, I don't know, they've done Broadway, they've been in a major TV series, they do movies, and this still comes up. It just amazes me. I'm trying to think of the one person who said he never gets that, but I can't remember. I can't remember who it is. Okay. Do you believe in luck?
Yes. But I also think that I'll expand on that. I do think that luck exists, but I also think that there's ways that we can emphasize our luck or increase our luck by identifying as lucky.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That is a good
Hmm.
good note. Social media, you think it's good or bad?
Both.
Both.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'll start with the good. The good is it helps us be connected. It helps us promote our business. I made a lot of collaborations with social media. The downside is it isolates us. It's isolating us. It's preventing us from really making genuine human connection. And it's also can be divisive too.
It definitely can be divisive. More every day. Unfortunately, I think it's one of the I think it's one of the drivers of this civil. I mean, to me, there's a civil war going on, whether it's violent or not. It's happening. Do you have a favorite podcast that you listen to?
Um, I would say Diary of a CEO is one.
Hmm.
Um, I also listen to what other one do I listen to? I listen to School of Greatness, Lewis Howes. Sometimes I listen to Tim Ferriss, and I also listen to because I'm starting a podcast. There's one called the School of Podcast
Oh, yeah.
by Dave Jackson is the name. So he's a podcast coach, and I started listening to some of his content.
It's interesting. This is me being a little judgmental, but I have seen a lot of people who are podcast coach, not him at all, but who don't have big podcasts. And I always
I
think, I
I
mean,
know what you're talking about too because
yeah,
I mean I was guilty of the sometimes a little gullible because since I become like very interested in being podcast social. I've been getting flooded with social media ads of like, podcast coaching and podcast growth services.
right.
One program I signed up for, I'm not going to mention the person's name, he's on Podmatch and he's podcast coach. I show up to do my interview. He doesn't even know how to work Riverside. I'm sitting there going like, I had to kind of guide him through. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I paid you to coach me on a podcast. Was a mistake.
I actually think one of the best podcast coaches is the head of Podmatch. The
Alexander, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's just watching the tapes that he has on there are they're pretty good in the way he sets up and stuff.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, he's
Yeah,
been, doing so. I've been following him too a little bit now.
yeah. It's definitely helpful. Have you got any new furniture lately? I told you these were random.
New furniture, not recently. I need new furniture. That I know. Not a whole lot, but like I'm looking for a new office chair for my home office. So
Oh
I'm probably
man, that is hard. I just got a new office chair a few months ago and I can't stand it. It doesn't lean forward. This is the one I'm sitting in.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
mine.
it's hard.
What's because mine's getting older, so it started to creak like every
No,
time
yeah.
I move, and it's like no. I'm like it just sounds. It's like one of those like eventually it's like the fingernails on a chalkboard type of creaking eventually.
Yeah, you
Okay,
don't want that, especially if you're going to do podcasts.
exactly.
I bought an expensive gaming chair that I use on Twitch, but it's not comfortable. It's very adjustable, but it's still a little uncomfortable. But it's a nice chair. What was the last thing you bought online?
Last thing I bought online was probably for my mobile phone, which I'm waiting to get. Thing because for podcasting is a mobile tripod.
Nice. I have dozens of mobile phone attachments now, just because
Mhm.
at some point I started using the camera on my phone. I'm using it now. It's the best camera that I have. Everything else breaks. Have you broken any laws lately?
Uh, no, I don't. I'm not going to admit it. No, no. I've been too good.
Mhm.
I think my problem, like when you see these like social media quizzes, like put one to everything you haven't done. I really have a high number. I'm like, I gotta do something else because must be too innocent.
Oh yeah, I usually have a pretty high number on those because of my youth. I
Yeah,
was,
no, I played it a little too safe for the youth. Um,
I did not. I was the youngest, and so I got away with more, I think.
well, coincidentally, I'm the youngest, and I got the least amount of trouble. No, I don't know. I was too scared.
Oh, that's funny.
I
Yeah.
don't, I don't think I would be that good of a criminal because I give myself away. I used to give myself away, like my parents used to laugh because when I would play hide and seek with me as a toddler or a child, they'd be walking around saying, "Where," like hitting on her, "Where are you?" And I would yell, "I'm not in here," but of course, not knowing my voice would automatically know where I was.
No, you would make a very good criminal.
Yeah,
So,
no, yeah, I mean that, and other people used to tease me too because even when I was younger, like because I'm the youngest too, so my older brother one time, told a story where, um, he would tell me like one time, like was avoiding a couple of people because this is when we had house landlines. He said, if anybody calls, tell them I'm not here. Well, I took that literal. So when they would call and ask for him, I said, well, my brother said to tell you he's not here.
well, you
Yeah,
should.
that didn't really help the situation.
That's hilarious.
Um,
Well, we would, if I ever did that, it's probably I would have done it on purpose, just piss off
Well, it was
my
innocent in my end,
siblings.
but I remember my older brother he used to curse at me like, "I'm never taking you out to rob a bank." I'm like, "Ian, trying to make sense not to."
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a very good getaway person.
Have you ever wanted to do, besides doing the three jobs that you do now, have you ever wanted to do something else for a living?
When I was in high school, I had two different careers besides psychology. When I was at first, like my first 2 years, I wanted to be a chef.
Oh,
I
yeah.
took during vocational schools. I went even though I did college prep and high school, I also did vocational, and I did cooking, and then I also went like transformed into baking. So I used to cook and bake a lot when I was a teenager. I coincidentally haven't cooked or baked anything since I was 17. So over 30 years ago. So I haven't. But that was like one thing, and then when I was a senior in high school, because I was going to college, my guidance counselor had a scare, a discussion with me that sort of scared me while going into my senior year. He told me, he said, you have to take chemistry. And
Huh.
as a subject, as a science,
Uh-huh.
you have to take chemistry. Most colleges are going to expect that. And I got really nervous because I thought I heard my, peers, and I even heard my people went to, even my family went to high school who said, chemistry was like a nightmare. They barely passed, and so I was walking in there terrified. Ironically, through a twist of fate, that was the best class I've ever taken in high school.
Oh,
I
that's
loved
great.
it. I got straight A's. None of my like my acquaintances and friends in high school could figure that one out because they kept warning me like I know you're smart, but you're not going to survive. This guy because the teachers are were very tough and old school.
Hmm. Right. Right.
And coincidentally, I got along with those type of teachers. I think that's because I was kind of meant to be a teacher. So I got along both in high school and in college with the most toughest teachers. The teachers that everyone feared, they were my favorites. And but anyway, going back to the chemistry thing, I was like second marking period. I was like, I'm gonna be a chemist.
Wow. Chemistry is really interesting.
I
That's an
I
interesting
loved it.
field. Yeah.
I mean, I would. It was like I looked forward to going to class every day
Hmm.
to chemistry. Um, Other people were complaining, and crying and complaining. I was like, this is fun.
That's great.
I could do this all day long. And I think that's because I was always an analytical type person.
Right.
So,
Right.
hello, that would make perfect sense why I would love chemistry now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I guess, I was still, psychology went over. Um, because and looking back at my high school years, I much different than what I am now. Well, everybody is, but I didn't. Here's the weird part about like me with math. I didn't do well in algebra and geometry, but then explain how I did so well in chemistry, which kind of requires a little bit of understanding of algebra and geometry to some level. So I don't, and even my chemistry teacher walked up to me, at the end of the year and said, because I used to tell him I would struggle in math.
Hmm.
I don't understand. He's like, if I didn't know, I would have thought you were a math whiz. And then in college, I had to take statistics, which, for psychology, and it was my favorite class. And in high school, and even when I took an algebra class in college, my first year, I struggled to pass. But yet, I breezed through chemistry, breezed through statistics. That was actually tutoring statistics. And again, even my professors my statistics professors looked at me and said, "You must be a math whiz in algebra." No,
It must have to do with your level of interest.
it was my
You
fear.
know,
It was
that
my
was your
fear.
fear.
Both of those two things. So now, like when I tell people who are like college students and even high school, I'm like, when you're telling me that you can't do math, first of all, it's all in your head.
Right. Right.
All in your head. It is not. Now, it does require a different part of your brain. Like it does require using your right brain to do math, especially abstract math. So if you're so used to using your left brain, it does require a little bit of training to kind of like, but you can do that. And I said, why don't you look at it as a way to challenge your right brain?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing, because people ask me, I think if you ask me what would I do differently in high school, that would be the first thing. I'd learn to love algebra and geometry. And if
Yeah.
that meant doing extra work, I would have done, because if I have an analytical mind, there's no reason why I shouldn't have done extremely well in algebra and geometry.
I don't know what I would have done differently in high school. I didn't like high school. That's an
Well,
interesting thing to think of. I don't even think about that.
I don't,
Okay.
I liked it, but of course I made, that the
And
first thing. And on a personal level, the second thing I would change and implement if I were to go back was I wouldn't give a damn what people thought of me. When I was in high school, I was such a people pleaser. I needed to fit in, and I would try too hard of fitting in. That I think alienated people. I
that
know I
would
did.
that'd probably be something good for anyone in high school. I'm sure I worried too much about what people thought of me. I'm sure I did. It took a while. Yeah. Okay, two more little tidbits. Do you believe in talent?
Yes,
God,
but
I
I
hope so.
also, well, yeah. I mean, that would be kind of ironic to say, yeah, I don't believe in it, and that's what I do.
It's what you
I
do.
represent talent. But I also, I do believe on some that people are born, that some people are born with it. But I also believe that it can also be developed. So through hard work and perseverance.
Yeah, I'll get that answer from a lot of people, and I believe that too. I do believe that some, excuse me, I do believe that some people are born with unprecedented amount of talent, and those are the people that we're probably really jealous of.
Mhm.
They that become star quarterbacks and just have an easier time. Do you think there is something after this?
You mean afterlife?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what that looks like. I don't have any preconceived notions. I just find it very hard to believe that this is it. Um, that's me. I don't necessarily share a secular belief. I mean, I was grown up kind of Catholic, in a Catholic household. We were non-observational, but we were Catholic. I don't necessarily know if I believe in, the traditions of heaven and hell. But I do believe that there's something beyond.
Hmm.
Again, I also kind of, in my beliefs, are kind of like thought we're not really meant to know exactly what it is, because if we knew exactly what was waiting for us, we wouldn't. Why would we make any effort to live a good life?
That's interesting. I don't think we're meant to know what's beyond either, but and not for that reason, but just because how can we have this earthbound experience if we know
If we know,
what's
well,
on the other side, or
it's not going to mean anything earthbound. And because
right,
I've listened, now
right.
because I've listened to accounts of people who have, like, NDEs, near death experiences,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
I'm
part
really
of
into
me,
those.
I'm very into it too. And
Yeah,
now there's also, I'm going to be completely honest, there is a science part of it, but skeptical part, because I also
right,
know that when the brain and body is depleted of oxygen, that there's a rush of endorphins, which can create a psychedelic experience, which can convey the out of body, sensations. And plus, a lot of us are told the same things happen. So could it be placebo effect, where people are told that this is what's going to happen and they automatically assume that? Plus,
right,
also,
right.
technically, with near death experiences, you're not fully dead yet.
Exactly,
All you do
exactly.
is your body stops ceasing to function, your heart rate and your breathing stop, but you're able to be revived, which technically meant you weren't dead, fully dead. So, but also, on the other hand, there are plenty of accounts where people had recalled conversation that they heard in the operating room if they had a near death experience.
Right. And
And
yeah.
it's like, okay, well, how could that have been?
How can they do that? And I've heard a lot of accounts of people who are complete skeptics, like they're atheists, basically, and they have this experience. Now they could be making this up for attention. You never know.
Yeah,
They could be, coming up with a story, but there are a few that are pretty well documented that, the person was not at all
yeah.
interested in an afterlife or
Well,
believing in it,
that's what makes me. But
Yeah.
also, again, like, um, people were able to recall things, like, and there was another time where, a hospital actually, was interested in, like, the, so they actually taped something on, like, like in a high part of the wall.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times patients were reporting a near death experience that they would be kind of floating around their body,
Right.
having an out of body experience. And they actually were able to recall, like, what the people have taped up on the ceiling. So how could that be? That can't be, strictly full imagination. Now there is also that argument that because the body's in a lot of physical pain, that it will disassociate. You do disassociate, which could be why you have that illusion of stepping outside your body on a neurochemical level. Um, I mean, that's the thought. I don't know if I believe, but I do believe that there's something beyond. But I also heard a lot of people say who had near-death experiences, they couldn't really describe it.
Yeah, that comes up a lot, and that is makes me. I lean pretty hard towards believing in the near death people. I
I
mean,
do too.
some of them I hear it's like come on, it's the story, but
Yeah,
a lot of very compelling ones that almost to a person they say, it's not describable, which has always been my one of my opinions is that you can't describe what's beyond this, basically, because you're in
because
this
first of all,
reality.
it's another dimension, and
Yeah, it's another. Yeah,
we're not human in that form, so it's gonna be
right,
hard to describe that. And one
right,
person is
right.
really believable, which said he had a near death experience where he went into spirit form, where he said, and he had no memory of who he was or
Hmm.
any of his past memories on Earth. He had all this wisdom, he said, felt, but he had no idea, like all his memories of his Earth. And I'm like, that could make sense
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Because I do know that we don't. It's not like we're in the same dimension now. But I've always found, like, when I was growing up, this is one of my biggest questions, and I think the secular viewpoint of heaven and hell scared me, even on heaven's side, because I would ask people, and who said, "Well, what happens with that?" Oh, you're going to be hanging out with in the Garden of Eden, playing harps, and all I thought to myself was, I would get bored in about 10 minutes of doing that.
Which is what a lot of us think. Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
this would be very boring if I'm sitting and
yeah.
floating in the clouds. How? I mean, I would for 5 minutes. I'm like, okay, cut me back. And then I'm supposed to spend eternity. You
Right.
know, what's interesting is sometimes I hear what I'm hearing a lot of things with near death experiences is say that they say that when they come back, saying what we're living in now is a simulation. Like Earth life is a simulation.
Which
I'm like, that's it. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but
I've heard this a lot, and I don't think they literally mean a computer is simulating our reality.
no, I don't
I
think
think
that.
they mean this is this is a simulation compared to
But it's like, or
whatever
really, it's
yeah, to actual
not only
reality, which is I
okay. I've
mean,
actually said like like we look right now as like spirit as being an illusion. They say actually Earth is really the illusion.
right. And science is getting there. Science is coming
Well,
closer and closer to going, yeah,
I'm starting to see
that's
like even
yeah,
neuroscientists coming out and saying that they're convinced that there's another dimension.
at least. Right. And
Because I again
yeah.
have a hard time believing
I
that.
think with AI and quantum computing, we're going to learn a lot about metaphysics really fast. Not metaphysics. What am I trying to say? The the universe, the way the universe
Yeah,
works, how things are put together. The things that we're theorizing now might be they might be overthrown really fast at a certain point.
yeah. I mean, like I said, so I don't know. Like I
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm not really trying to. I'm not going to spend my days like what's going to happen because we'll know it at some point. We're all going to know it at some point. Um, but again, I just have a really hard time believing that it's just completely nothing. Because something like that's what atheists believe. Oh, it's just a void of nothing. I have a hard time believing that.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. There is yeah, yeah. That I don't believe. I believe there is something. But yeah, it's where the void is when we have to end this podcast, which is coming up right away. I'm
Yeah, that has to go in the afterlife. But anyway, no, I like I said, I just have a now. I do believe, I do kind of expect to know that if there is something beyond, it's gonna be nothing like Roots right now.
It's funny because I hear both with NDE experiences. I kind of hear both things. I hear people saying, they go to a place that's completely different, but I've also heard where they barely know that they've changed from the
Well,
physical plane to the non-physical plane. Like it's not
I've heard that,
a jolt.
especially for people who died suddenly, or people who like had an accident, where it's just
It's fast.
that because they feel like one of the biggest the things that I hear in that situation is like, well, I feel more alive than ever, you know,
Uh-huh.
but yet
Right.
they know it's like they when they see themselves laying on the ground or laying on the operating table, they have that sensation that looking at themselves, but they're like, I don't get it because I feel more alive than ever.
Or they feel like this is more real than anything they've ever
Yeah,
seen. Yeah, felt. Yeah. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre thing.
And
definitely.
I'm fascinated by this, and I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to be, keeping up on, all the new technologies that, but like I said, I don't know if we're fully meant to know exactly, because again, how are we going to really live our true, whatever destiny is on Earth? Like, no, exactly.
It's true. And a lot of people come back from an NDE and say that it's really hard to come back and remember that and then live in reality. And I can imagine it would be extremely
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah.
It,
Or,
I,
a
yeah.
lot of them say, I don't know how to explain this in English, in a normal English words, what I experienced.
Right. Right. But it would be you seeing the other side, remembering seeing the other side, and it would be hard, I think, to just live. It's like when I go to Hawaii and then I have to come back, and it's
Well,
difficult.
most people, at least the NDEs that I've heard about, most of them, their lives completely changed.
Right.
They
Yeah.
completely change
Yeah.
everything. And so I think that's interesting.
It is. It is very interesting.
And a lot of them, what's also interesting, I know it must be pleasant. A lot of them say they didn't even want to come back.
Right. I hear that almost all the time. Or they have a decision whether or not they want to come back, and they're told why, like what the some reason to come
But
back,
they need to come back.
and they
Yeah.
need to, yeah, and they need to come back. That would be interesting. Well, Albert, I've had a wonderful time
I
talking to
did too. I
you.
really enjoyed it.
This is It's been awesome. You're very easy to talk to and really great to have on the podcast. And so glad you reached out and agreed
And
to
thank
be
you for
on.
accepting. Glad that we,
Yeah, it's been good. And so at this point, I'm going to go. You've been listening to Were You Still Talking? This is Joel Albrecht. And on the show today, if you didn't know by now, you've been listening for a while, you should know. This is Albert Bramante. Bramante. Did I say that right?
Bramante, actually.
Bramante. I knew I got it right at least once.
Close, very close.
Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe or hit a button somewhere if you like this podcast. Let me know. It would really help. We're just about at our 100th episode now, but we're going to keep going because the longer I have a podcast, the more special it is. I'll explain that when I do my 100th episode or when I do my little explainer video. Thank you so much. And remember, be good to yourselves and be good to each other. And also, thanks, Albert, so much for the work you do as a teacher and as an agent. I know it's very hard work, and so I appreciate it.
Thank you.